up on the next street from Larry Smith in Tampa. He was like one of my heroes. And he snapped his hamstring, a terrible hamstring tear, about 2 weeks before the season opener in that '68 season. Is the year that they were calling it the year of the Gator. I mean, that was the promo for it. I think Norm got a little excited about that season, but actually the talent on that team, if the freshmen would have been eligible, was by far the most talent that the University of Florida ever had in the 4 years I was there.
And that's 1968.
Yeah, and it just so happened that the quarterbacks didn't work out for them that year, nor the receivers. If some of us freshmen could have played, it might have been the year of the Gator, because they had. But when Larry snapped that hamstring, it was like death moved in over that practice field. These guys probably remember, and he hobbled all year, and then they struggled with the passing game, and so it was a disappointing season, and I think that's why everybody just was down on the Gators and rated us so poorly going into the next season.
And that brought you up to Steve.
I just
Steve
wanted
Cannon.
to add, it's me again. I just wanted to add one thing, and that is, in the history of Florida, and like John said, freshmen weren't eligible; they had freshman teams. Well, the seniors that year had a freshman team that went undefeated, the only team ever to do that. So, we were kind of a little bit cocky of ourselves too. We became seniors now. We played a lot of these teams before and beaten them. We were an undefeated team as a freshman team, and so we could look around and see the help that we were getting from the younger guys. And so I think we all felt really pretty confident going into that. We certainly weren't afraid of Houston.
Yeah.
We've come into something, guys, that I had a little bit later, but we've addressed it now, and let's go ahead and talk about it, because that's one of the things I think that people do not know, other than maybe the most avid enthusiast or historian of the '69 Gators, and that is, the '69 Gators are, of course, known principally, if you will, or partly primarily, at the very least, for the Super Softs. And the Super Softs are synonymous with the '69 Gators. John Reeves, Carlos Alvarez, Tommy Durrance, Mike
Cheney,
Rich, some others.
Yeah.
But really, the fundamental structure and undergirding of the team was a very large class of very good, solid seniors and senior leadership. So why don't we address that right now, and let's go back to Max Dean, who was one of those senior leaders on the offensive line and offensive captain.
Well, back then you don't have the big picture of what's going on with the team. We only knew that we had not lived up to expectations years before. We were seniors, and we were going to do everything we could to have a great team. We brought in sophomores. We had a brand new offensive coordinator in Fred Pancoast, and as long as we're talking about this, we need to mention Fred Pancoast. He had been, I believe he was a quarterback's coach before our former offensive coordinator, Ed Kensler, retired between the '68 season and the '69 season. So Fred Pancoast got his first shot at being offensive coordinator at the University of Florida. He saw John, and he saw Carlos, and he saw the skill that we had coming up from our freshman team, and put in an entirely new offense in the spring. Hadn't been seen at University of Florida before. And he got the key players, and, Tommy and I did, in the seniors, we did our part in trying to make everybody play together. We had the first blacks in our locker room with Willie Jackson and Leonard George. It was a time of great change through so many different directions. And we just kind of endured, and everything came along. Tommy?
Yeah, going into that season, I think people don't remember, but in the '67 and '68 years, we had some pretty strong defenses. We averaged giving up only 2 touchdowns a game for almost 2 years straight. And I thought we had a lot of confidence going into that game. Don't forget, Houston in '68 scored 100 points against Tulsa and 70 points against another team. So they thought they were an offensive power, but we thought we were a pretty dynamic group of at least defensive players. I thought we had a very strong defense going in there. And I got to tell you, I was so excited that game. I ran out the tunnel and onto the field, and I was crying like a baby. But just because of the excitement of where we were and what we were about to do. So I wasn't too surprised at the results of that game. I was pleasantly surprised.
It was our
special
game,
kind of energy.
It was our game plan to win that game just like that.
Yeah.
Steve Tannen, what address the fact that there was a lot of senior leadership, a lot of guys that had played a lot of football at Florida on that '69 team.
Yeah, I think that's true. We had in a lot of the skill positions, we had the newcomers come in that really helped us. But like any baseball team, football team, down the middle, quarterback, center, middle linebacker, free safety, it's the same thing with pitcher, catcher, and center fielder. And we had that except for John, but John was very mature for his age, and he was a fabulous player. And we had more guys on defense that were seniors, I think, and we had fewer sophomores that played on defense than we had on offense. And so, if the defense can keep you in the game, the offense can make a few mistakes and then but end up winning the game. So we had that solid thing with the defense, and the offense really just exploded with all these Mike Rich and Andy Chaney and John and Carlos and Tommy Durrance, and just all those things happened.
Yeah, and so basically there was a very solid foundation. I think there were at least 8 or 9 veteran players, if not seniors, on that defense that everybody overlooked. Veteran offensive line, and then some very talented new guys coming in fresh and bringing a fresh perspective. One of those guys was the quarterback John Reeves. Can you tell us your thoughts, John? Coming up to start your first game, as a Florida Gator, and doing it against a very highly touted team like Houston.
Well, I would like to say that these guys provided such great leadership that we were in awe of them. The guys that were the true sophomores getting a chance to play, and they took all the heat off. They took all the pressure off of us because they provided such great leadership. I remember Kim Helton, our center, but we'd have a break or something, and before the next period would start, he'd be out on the field, and the whole offensive line would be out there with him, 4 seniors and a junior, Donnie Williams. Huddle up. Let's get it going. Nobody was straggling over there off the sideline with a bad attitude, worrying about practice. But Kim and Mac took the leadership on that offensive line, and then Sheik over there on defense. And we had a young pup over there named Jack Youngblood as well that I don't think any of us realized how great he was. And so it was just a thrill to be plugged into that type of great leadership and great talent that they had. Steve, of course, over there with the secondary. Mark Ely on the other corner, very underrated player. Alberry at safety, another senior. I guess Jack Burns at the other safety, but very tough defense, And all we had to do is fill in a few holes, and they made it easy for us.
We're going to take a quick break, guys. When we come back, we'll start talking about filling in those holes with the Super Softs and John Reeves and Carlos Alvarez. And I also want to say before we go to break that another one of those senior leaders is joining us today, and that's Wayne Griffith, who was a senior offensive lineman on that team.
Hey, Griff.
And we might hear from Wayne a little bit later, too, if he'd like to join us.
And Bob
Bobby Packrat Coleman is here from California.
Bob Coleman is here as well, another one of those senior leaders on that team.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more the inside story of the 1969 Gators on Talkin Old School. Stay with us.